The SR-71 is undeniably the most sophisticated and fastest jet ever to be built. And not only that, did you know that this plane has never been shot down by any enemy aircraft or missiles? Let's take a look at the fastest jet that has ever been built for the military, and even with the technological advancements we have made, we still cannot reach the magical number that the SR-71 was able to achieve. Before we get into the video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all our videos. SR-71 Origins. The SR-71 came at a crucial time for America. It was at the height of the Cold War, and there were two countries that fought for global dominance. But this was not an all-out fight going to war guns blazing. The Cold War is the rivalry and antagonism that emerged between the United States and the Soviet Union, along with their respective allies after World War II. The Soviet takeover of Eastern Europe frightened the United States and Britain, who feared the spread of Soviet influence and communism in Western Europe and worldwide. The Cold War era reinvented the idea of what war should be. Instead of soldiers on the ground fighting each other, the Cold War started a race for intelligence and to have better tech. It was then that the Soviet Union was impenetrable. A barrage of high-tech MiG fighter jets that could reach Mach 3 speeds and a complex radar system never seen before could detect just about any plane that the United States could throw at them. And it seemed like the US was in the dark and could not do anything but hope for the best. Soon, America began its surveillance of the Soviet Union by launching the U-2. At the time, the plane, which was neither very fast nor stealthy, had one significant advantage above all. It could fly at 70,000 feet, which was higher than the radar capability of the Soviet Union, or at least that is what the Americans thought. But they were wrong. This false sense of security is what led to one of the U-2s being shot down in 1960. Both its pilot and the plane were showcased to the world as a form of American aggression, and things were getting more and more out of hand, and it was decided that there was only one way to conduct surveillance machines against the Soviet Union. What do you do when the enemy has better radar and better jets than you? Well, the answer, as it seems out, is to build better jets. It all seems so simple on paper, but the reality was far from it. The answer to America's prayer was the Lockheed SR-71, a jet that could outrun the fastest fighter jets the Soviet Union had, and also one that could outrun the complex surface-to-air missile systems of the Soviet Union. The SR-71, or known as the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, was built by Lockheed after it was appointed by the CIA to make the next generation of spy planes. Lockheed already had a go-to for building the SR-71 since their flagship at the time. The A-12 was already in service by the CIA. Later, the version built for the Air Force, the one we all know to be called the SR-71 Blackbird, is the one that stood the test of time and would be used for the reconnaissance mission against the Soviet Union. The SR-71 was designed in the 1960s, and its first ever flight was on the 22nd of December 1964, and then was put into service in January 1966. The SR-71 was based on the A-12, and it was built with a reduced cross-radar section, which means that it was harder for the plane to be detected by other radar systems. And on top of that, it was heavier and bigger than the A-12, which meant that it could have a two-seater cockpit and larger space to store fuel. This being a reconnaissance plane meant that it didn't need space to store missiles and guns, but instead had signals, intelligent sensors, a side-looking airborne radar, and a camera, all of which would let it spy on the Soviet Union from far away. But what about the surface-to-air missiles that could shoot down a U-2 that was flying at 70,000 feet? After all, the SR-71-2 only had a maximum ceiling range of 70,000 feet, which means that it too could be a victim of the surface-air missiles. But the SR-71 had one thing that the U-2 did not have, and that was speed. The SR-71 could fly at speeds of Mach 3.3, and when other missiles targeted them, all they really did was alter their course and run away, since the SR-71 could keep up the speeds of Mach 3.3 for extended long periods of time. Even the MiG fighter jets of the Soviet Union could reach speeds of up to Mach 3.2, but this was only for a short period of time, and the SR-71 could keep this speed up for an extended period of time, in some cases even for hours. SR-71 world records. The speed set by the SR-71 is truly astounding, especially when you consider the fact that the SR-71 is still the fastest air-breathing manned aircraft to ever grace the skies. And guess who held the record before that? The A-12 jets, the very jets from Lockheed, which was used as a template to build the SR-71. It also holds the world record for flying over a recognized course, which means a course determined that could be used as a reference so anyone could understand. And in this instance, it is the distance between London and New York, and the distance between these two cities is 3,461.53 miles or 5,570.79 kilometers. and the SR-71 manages to travel between these cities in just 1 hour and 54 minutes. Just to put this in perspective, if you were to book a flight today from London to New York, the flight time would take you at least 7 hours and 40 minutes and may range up to 8 hours and 30 minutes. At the time, the SR-71 could travel to London and New York and back twice. The quirks of the SR-71. One of the most notable things about the SR-71, other than the plane itself, is the pilots. All pilots of the SR-71 were asked to wear spacesuits, which were made for NASA. But unlike NASA, these suits were not used in space, and so they were termed as pressure suits, and this gave way to the iconic yellow pressure suits that you see with SR-71 pilots. It was also a critical piece of kit to ensure the safety of the pilots safely, as the jet was consistently flying over Mach 3.3 speeds and also at an altitude of 70,000 feet. Flying over speeds of Mach 3.3 meant that the plane would heat up extensively, and the outside of the plane would reach temperatures of about 500 degrees Celsius. The engine housing reached an astonishing 1,000 degrees Celsius. Most of the aluminum used for aircraft at this time would not survive these heats and would end up the jet being lost with each trip. This meant they would have to go with materials never used, and they chose a material which was bought tough and did not weigh as much, and this was titanium. And this itself has a story in its own, since the largest supplier of titanium at its time was the Soviet Union, and it's not like you can go up and ask the Soviet Union for some titanium, so you could build a jet with those materials to spy on them. What the Americans cleverly did was use third world countries and a lot of proxy or non-existent organizations in non-NATO countries to buy the titanium ore and then have it shipped to the US. The SR-71 was very special, as you'll know by now, but the SR-71 has one more trick up its sleeve, and it's the fact that it doesn't have a fuel tank. Installing a metal tank would have been too heavy, and installing a plastic tank would only cause it to melt and burn at high speeds, turning the jet itself into a bomb. Since the jet doesn't need any equipment for defenses or bombs, it is basically an empty shell inside, which is where it would store fuel in compartments that were sealed off using a special adhesive, and it just didn't work out, as multiple reports suggested that loading the SR-71 fully would be a bad idea since it leaked fuel badly as it was sitting still in the runway or at takeoff, and this was all due to the titanium that was used. Since titanium contracts and expands in the heat, so the SR-71 took off with limited fuel and then did some laps till the titanium was expanded enough to be completely sealed, and then did an aerial refueling, which in turn filled up the SR-71. The SR-71 was truly one of a kind, but as time flew by, technology eventually caught up, and it was deemed too expensive to run. The last ever flight by the SR-71 was on the 9th of October 1999, signaling the demise of a legend. Have you seen one of these jets in a museum, or know someone who worked on these amazing jets? If you know, just let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe so you can watch more videos like this.